How do you balance health with everything else that you want to accomplish in life between career, work, family obligations? Well, I sit down with Jon Carder, the CEO and founder of Vessel, which aims to bring functional medicine to the masses. Typically, this type of medicine and these doctors are not really accessible to the everyday person. They're very expensive and require really understanding what's going on in your body on a regular basis. And so Vessel essentially provides a P card that gives you all of these various different markers of your health on an ongoing basis, and then helps you kind of figure out how can you improve. And this comes from Jon's own experience. He's a serial entrepreneur, having founded 4 different companies over the course of 23 years, bootstrapped, raised venture capital, and realizing that the old ramen diet that he had early on in his career had severely affected his health, energy levels, and was struggling to figure out a way to improve. And so that's kind of where this concept and idea for Vessel came from. And so I'm really excited to dive further into both Jon's journey and what he's learned over the successive 4 different companies that he started, as well as how you can have more energy in your life and career. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation on the Silicon Alley podcast featuring the Jon Carder. Are you interested in growing and scaling your business? Welcome to the Silicon Alley podcast, where you'll hear from entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and top performers on what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. You'll walk away with actionable insights you can apply in your own business and life. Now to William Glass, the CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and your host of the Silicon Alley podcast. Jon, welcome to the Silicon Alley podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Hey, William. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. You've started 5 companies, have been at this for 23 years. We were talking a little bit before we hopped on that you've seen the ups and downs, you've bootstrapped, you've raised venture capital. So really excited to dive in and kind of understand what you've learned along the way.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Awesome. So why don't we start at the beginning? Because it sounds like you've been an entrepreneur through and through. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you started your first company and like what led you to go down this kind of unique path of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think some of it was just kind of in my DNA from a young age. I think entrepreneurs can see little signals of that sometimes when they're kids. Like, for example, most kids had a lemonade stand. I had a hot dog stand that I put signs up all over the neighborhood for, my crappy hot dogs. I would go in and microwave them and then, bring them out. And sure enough, like cars came. I think people were just like really curious. And eventually a police officer came and he shut me down because I didn't have a food permit. And you can't sell hot dogs at the end of your driveway, apparently. So that was kind of my first foray into it. I just had this kind of like desire to make some money so I could buy things that I wanted. And it just started at a pretty young age. My first legitimate company was in college. Actually, it was kind of a random story how I fell into it. Not the traditional, what you hear a lot, nowadays of kids in college, like raising VC and getting started right away. This is back in 2000, and I was in San Diego going to college at the time. I think it was 19 or 20, and I didn't really know what venture capital was. I didn't have anyone in my network like that. Twitter, things like that didn't exist back then. And so, my first company was, I was working this job for this hamburger place, passing out flyers in front of a swap meet. And there was all these pregnant women with babies going in there. And I thought it would be a great idea to sell baby products at the swap meet. That ended up being a horrible idea, by the way. I wouldn't recommend anyone do that because no one's going there to buy baby products. But I got some credit cards at college. They give out credit cards back then. A couple $1,000s. I bought a bunch of baby products and I tried to sell them at the swap meet, and it failed miserably. Like, no one bought my baby products. So I had all these baby products. I wasn't making any money, passing out flyers anymore. So I was broke, out of cash, wasn't working. And a friend of mine's like, "Hey, you should try this internet thing." And surprisingly enough, I didn't actually know a lot about the internet back then, even though it was year 2000. Like, my parents, don't have a lot of money. I went to college with a typewriter with a little computer vision screen on it. So, that was high tech. I had to go to the, library to use the internet. Phones didn't have, internet back then. And a friend of mine was a website builder. So I gave him my last $300 to build this website to sell these products online called Baby's Heaven. He happened to be in a rock and roll band and just loved that style. So he built the worst baby website you could imagine. It was a gold gate with Metallica letters like Baby's Heaven and black and purple. not pink and blue like you would want. And it was awful. I mean, we launched it, nobody bought anything. I was out of money. I was, my entrepreneur career was about to be cut real short. And, a friend of mine kind of told me about this idea, like, hey, you should go get other websites to link to you that don't compete directly with you. Like somebody that website moms would visit, but that doesn't sell products. So I ended up going to Huggies because you can't buy directly from them. You have to buy by the truckload. And I was like, hey, I sell your diapers on my website. Would you link to me? And sure enough, they responded and they're like, yeah, send us a banner. We'll put it up. I didn't know what a banner was. So I went back to my web developer. I was like, hey, I give you a banner. Can you build something and make it pink and blue? So we put together a cute banner. We put it on Huggies, and I'll never forget my first order. I mean, as an entrepreneur, when you get that first sale, it is so exciting. I was like running down the street. All my neighbors knew that I was, doing this company because I was just talking to them all about it. So now I have my first order. It was pretty awesome. We celebrated that night. And I think from then on, it was just a learning experience, self-taught, just going into, back then it was like chat rooms. Now it's blogs and books and, incubators and anywhere I can gain knowledge. I've got mentors. I just kind of taught myself how to do it. And over time, kind of figured it out. Every company I get a little wiser. Every company, I still make really stupid mistakes. But they can continually get a little bit bigger and a little bit more challenging. I think I'm a glutton for punishment in that way. I keep trying bigger and more bold companies as I go along. But yeah, it's been 5 years, or sorry, 5 companies in 23 years.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, John. And yeah, getting shut down by the police as a kid must have been eye opening there of how tough the business world is. And then yeah, launching a baby website with Metallica lettering is probably not a best practice.
I wouldn't recommend it. Wouldn't recommend it.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it sounds like you had this inkling and just kind of kept trying to figure things out. So talk to me about like what happened after that, right? So you end up making that first sale. You've now got this website. Like, did you continue to sell baby products? Did you expand? Like, what actually happened? And did you ever get that investment back, that $300 into the website?
We did, barely. So that first company totally bootstrapped. I mean, I was living off Top Ramen, literally living off it. People say like, oh, I eat a lot of Top Ramen. I mean, breakfast, lunch, dinner, because I was going to college at the time at the beginning, and I had to pay for half of my college. And so, I just didn't have any money. I remember macaroni and cheese is like 5 times the cost of Top Ramen. It's like $1 when Top Ramen's like 10 cents. And so that was like one night a week. I got that on Friday night. So if you really want to bootstrap, you can live off 10 to 12 cents per meal. I'm not sure there's much nutrient content. I probably did some serious damage to my body, but I got by on, peanuts. And I just kept teaching myself like how to get more traffic to the website. So it started with like other sites linking to me. That was where I kind of first got some traction. Then I learned about affiliate programs. I think I joined like Commission Junction or one of those affiliate program networks, started getting traffic that way. Then I learned about pay-per-click traffic. We called it PPC back then. I think more like SEM now, but built a bunch of keywords, hundreds, thousands of keywords. I was managing them myself and trying to drive traffic in that way. One of my neighbors knew a little bit about internet marketing, so I hired him. He worked out of my living room and he was teaching me some of the things. I eventually put my girlfriend at the time on customer service. That ended up being a bad idea. She worked for free, which was great, but she was really fiery from Spain. She's a very passionate woman. And we were dealing with baby products. So a lot of times like UPS would damage the crib or whatever on the way. And then the woman would call us like really pissed off because her baby was due in a couple of weeks. And the crib was broken or something like that. And then my girlfriend would be kind of yelling back. I remember like hearing these heated conversations. Don't take free labor if it doesn't work for the customers. That was another big mistake. But we ended up, we survived, and we just were scrappy and learning and growing. Ultimately, that wasn't a big win for me. We did grow to a couple million in sales in our first couple years, which was pretty cool. Dropped out of college, worked on it full time, eventually got to like 10 of my friends all working for me. Probably wouldn't recommend hiring all your friends. I just didn't have a big network back then and just kind of had to make do with who I knew and what was around me. And that led to some issues like the customer service issue, other challenges. But, we did make it. We eventually had to sell to Baby Universe. What happened there was we had like, because the customer service wasn't great, we got chargebacks. People would be like, I tried calling them, like, I didn't like the service I got, so I just want my money back from the bank. if you get over 1% of those, it's why you got to take good care of your customers, because if you get over 1% of those, the bank will hold a reserve. And I didn't know about any of this stuff at the time, and was living, paycheck to paycheck, eating top ramen. The bank said, hey, look, we got over 1% chargebacks. We're going to need to hold a $90,000 reserve because you're doing over 100,000 a month in sales. And I was like, okay, there's no way we're going to survive. We don't have 90,000 bucks. My parents don't have money. I didn't have a network yet. We ended up selling to Baby Universe back then. Not a big exit, just kind of a soft landing for the team. I was able to pay payrolls, etc. But for me, it was a huge learning lesson for about 2.5, 3 years of just cutting my teeth on an internet business, how to drive traffic, learning the valuable lessons about taking care of customers. And that all led to my second company, which was helping people find good rates on home loans on the internet. And I'd actually heard the idea for this while I was working at the baby company. I was interviewing someone for a job, and they were like, they came from an insurance lead company. I'm like, how does that work? I was really inquisitive, and I think that's always helped me a lot in my career. And the person told me that they basically have this form on the website. A person fills out the information looking for insurance quote, and they sell it to 4 insurance companies. There's no hard goods. There's no warehousing. I mean, I had storage units at like a local storage facility. I used to go to Costco to buy my diapers. Like I had just a huge bed full of, the flatbeds with like diapers piled to the ceiling. Some 20-year-old. The girls were super confused seeing me go through Costco with all these diapers. And I had to store them. I had to ship them myself. It was a big, load. I was like, this is amazing. You can sell information on the internet. That seems way easier. So a friend of mine was in the mortgage business. So I decided to do mortgage leads instead of insurance leads. And it was such an interesting reversal. Like living off top ramen for 3 years probably did some damage to my body from the lack of nutrients. And then I started this mortgage lead company where I would drive traffic to this form and say, hey, are you looking for a home loan refinance or purchase? And we'll match you up to multiple banks. They'll compete for your loan. I was able to use the techniques that I learned at the baby company to drive in traffic to create a lead for around $2 or $3 each. I was buying clicks for a penny or two, and I had like 1 million keywords. At that point, I'd learned how to generate tons of keywords, manage them in bulk, and I was advertising on Google, which had just kind of launched their pay-per-click engine at this point. And it was crazy because I was selling it for $20 or $30 to like 2 or 3 mortgage banks. So I went from dead broke, paycheck to paycheck, couldn't cover the reserve that the bank wanted to hold, to the second or third month of running the mortgage lead company, I profited $100,000.
Wow.
It was crazy. I remember, like for tax purposes, my tax guy recommended I buy a large truck. Back then, that was a Hummer. Kind of embarrassing to say, but I did because he said that's a good use of the cash kind of protects it. I drive home to my parents' house. They knew about the baby company, all the challenges. Here I am, like 4 months later, driving in a brand new fancy car. My mom was like, "Oh my gosh, are you selling drugs? I think you're selling drugs. Like, what is going on? You were just broke. This company just like pretty much failed, and now all of a sudden you're driving a fancy car." And I tried to explain it to her. It's a little complicated. It's kind of a funny story. She didn't quite understand the lead business, and she was always a little concerned about me. Fast forward 4 years, same thing in that business, just learning, new marketing techniques, paying much better attention to customer service. We bootstrapped that company as well. No venture capital invested. We grew it to about 10 million plus in revenue, about 60 or 80 employees. I think at one point we had maybe 100, and we sold it to internet brands in LA. And that was a good exit. And for me personally, life-changing. And it was crazy bootstrapping that thing because we had profitable months and then negative profitable months, and it was just incredibly stressful. But when we sold it, the Fortune Small Business decided to do an article on all these people selling their companies, saying like, "It's now a good time to sell." This is like 2007. It was a good time to sell, ends up.
Yeah.
And they interviewed like 8 entrepreneurs, and they took photos of all of us, and they just happened to get a good photo of me on the beach here in San Diego holding a surfboard. It looked great. They put it on the cover. I didn't even know. And my mom is a teacher. I went to the school where she taught, and so all the teachers know me as well. And they subscribe to that magazine. So she comes into the teacher's lounge. A teacher sees me on the cover of Fortune Small Business, tells my mom, "Oh, isn't that your son, John?" She sees me on there, and for the first time believes that I'm not selling drugs and I'm a real entrepreneur, and I was actually successful. And ever since then, she's been, very proud. But it was a wild ride. And, if I hadn't cut my teeth in that first company and learned all those techniques about internet marketing, just stayed really hungry to learn, we would never have made it. And in fact, at that mortgage lead company, what's interesting there is we started with lots of keywords on Google, and it worked until everybody else figured that out, and all of a sudden the leads were costing $5 and then $10, then $20. It's kind of like a race to the bottom when something works on the internet. Same thing with Facebook. Now it's TikTok. Once enough people figure out about it, it gets expensive, more expensive, and the profit margins just go away. So we ended up trying different things. We ended up with a call center, and like 60 of our staff were a call center where we'd start overseas. We'd have them contact the lead that we just generated online, validate that they were interested, pass it to our internal call center, and then we would do what's called a live transfer right to a banker and charge like $100-$120 for that live transfer. And we were one of the first companies to innovate and do that. And that saved us, because the online pay-per-click ads just didn't work at the end. At the end, I think digital was like 5% of our sales and call center was like 95%.
Wow.
So that's the thing about the internet. Constantly got to be looking for that new channel that's got not a lot of people knowing about it, and you're innovating in that channel better than others. You can do really well there, but eventually it starts to fade, and you've got to try out new channels. And the good news is there's always new channels coming up. There's always something where the people's attention are being drawn that you can grab customers. And as I get older and the companies get more sophisticated, our marketing gets more sophisticated. Like we do personas now and really good targeting, which we never used to do back in the day with a spray and pray approach. But yeah, that innovating to a call center kind of saved the company and kept us on a really rapid growth rate, which made us attractive to.
That's interesting. Yeah. So John, how did you come up? Like, was that was that obvious, or did you try a number of different things and that call center is what ended up sticking? Like, because that's not necessarily an obvious thing to do, right? If you're definitely one of the first.
Yeah, I think a couple of things there. We were constantly innovating, and me as a CEO was kind of a growth-minded CEO. We didn't call them growth hackers or growth people back then, but that was kind of the mindset. Like, how do we get more traffic cost effectively and grow the business? And I also surrounded myself with others in the space that were doing similar things. So there was kind of like a little network of us lead generators. We were pretty tight. Some of them wanted a lot of employees like me and wanted to grow a big business. Some of them wanted to just sit on in a house in Hawaii and work 4 hours a day. And so we always shared tips, tactics. And so we kind of like, a lot of us were trying this around the same time and innovating around this and kind of sharing how it was working. So that network also helped. I find talking to your competitors and getting to know them and sharing with them can actually be really helpful. And I've kind of always tried to do a little bit of that. Not always the person on the other side wasn't always open to it. So like we do this sort of with Vessel, but not as much. But I've definitely had that happen in multiple companies where a competitor and I have shared and helped each other, because it's such a big space. Rising tide rises all boats kind of thing, and there's plenty for everybody. That abundance mindset has paid off, because I think somebody else was trying some live transfer stuff. It's hard to remember because it was a while back, but
Sure,
and I was like, ooh, that looks interesting. And we kind of learned from them and tried some stuff, and then they learned from us, and vice versa.
Gosh. No, yeah, that makes sense. I've heard that, right? A lot of entrepreneurs will say it's actually good to talk to competitors or pseudo competitors, and unless you're, I guess, already like, an established market and it's like Burger King versus McDonald's, that's different. But in the startup world, right, when no one really knows what they're doing,
Yep.
It's a little different.
Totally. And typically the spaces we're playing in are so massive that if we help each other, we'll both get bigger. The space itself will benefit. More attractive to VCs, more attractive to acquirers. So you really do help each other out, and hopefully both get a good ending at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So John, the first two businesses you said were bootstrapped, right? And then the future business have all been you've raised venture capital for. What did you learn? What have you learned from bootstrapping, right? Because you didn't have the network, as you said, you didn't really know about venture capital. Like, what did you learn from the bootstrapping process? And then would love to kind of transition into why you decided to raise venture capital for the next series of companies.
Yeah, I mean, bootstrapping is highly stressful. We were like near death, every 3 months when I was bootstrapping. At the second company, at the first company, we were near death like every month. We were like always almost no money in the bank account, paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. So it's tough. I mean, that takes a load on you when you're young, in your 20s and even early 30s. It's a lot. You can take that, pressure and sustain yourself even on top ramen alone. I mean, I have a living proof. But I think, as I had an exit, I mean, one of the things that happened to me when I did finally exit was a really important kind of mind shift. And I wish I would have done this earlier. I basically went on, I sold the company. They didn't need me to run it because they had a division already, a mortgage lead division. So they were just acquiring, our company and going to roll it in there. So I got some freedom to do whatever I wanted. And I decided I was going to travel. I hadn't traveled much at all. And I love to surf. So I went on a surf trip. And first my buddies all came with me, but then they all had jobs, and I was like 27 years old. So everybody had jobs and they had to go back after like a week or two. And so I was stuck on this island, Timor Island chain in Indonesia for a week by myself at a resort where nobody spoke English. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have internet access even on the resort. So it was great. It was like one of those quiet retreats that are really popular nowadays. I just sat and got to think a lot. And the thing that I realized is I love this game of entrepreneurship. I love the challenges, the learning, the growth. That is really important for my fulfillment, to have that challenge. I can't just travel and surf all day. As cool as that sounded when I was in the darkest of days as an entrepreneur, that is only cool for a very limited amount of time. And then it's like, okay, I need a challenge. It's just who I am. And I think a lot of us entrepreneurs who are truly entrepreneurs in our DNA, we need that challenge to be happy, to be fulfilled. I've seen guys sell and then go and try to do nothing and let it surf and party and travel. Again, cool for a while. It's good to de-stress, but then it's not fulfilling after a while. You're not building anything. You're not contributing back. You're not learning. You're not growing. And so ultimately, I kind of came to this realization, I'm probably going to be doing this until I'm like 70 or 80 years old, because I love it. There's parts I hate about it, but I love the whole process. And so since I'm going to be playing for the long game now, and let's not burn myself out. Like, let's be more balanced. One of the ways to do that is to raise venture capital. So we're not near death all the time. We're only near death when the next funding round comes up, because if we don't raise, we might die. But it's like once a year now instead of once every month or quarter. There's different stresses with raising money. We've got VCs. Sometimes those relationships are great. Sometimes they're strained when the company's not doing well. Who's responsible if the company's not doing well? The CEO solely is responsible for that. And it can create challenges. It's hard to always have those relationships in a good place. And I've been really fortunate to have some great investors who are very understanding and, know everything's not going to go perfect and we're going to have some challenging times, but it's tough in its own right. And I think on that side, it's just really important to be as transparent as possible, as quickly as possible. The times I get myself in trouble with venture capital and with boards is if I try to solve a problem on my own and don't bring it up within 48 hours, then it doesn't feel like they're in the trenches with you, and you can lose some of that camaraderie and some of that trust. So that would be the biggest piece on that side, is just immediately, as quickly as possible, sharing the bad news, even though it's going to hurt and sting, and bringing them with you on every step of the journey, because then there's this camaraderie and trust that makes the relationship as healthy as it possibly can be. So that's been one of the things I've learned over time and over raising venture capital. And the last 3 companies we have raised VC in many rounds, probably 10 plus rounds of venture capital. And in raising that, like when I first went out to raise capital, I didn't know what to do. I read some books on it, talked to some friends who had raised money, but I was generally pretty naive. And it was wild. I talked to one VC at Metadata Airport. He loved the business because we had some pretty good traction. This is business number 3. And he literally gave me a term sheet the next week or two. And it was a great term sheet. We took it. And that was my first experience raising venture capital, the easiest round ever. Now, I have had, out of the 10 rounds, that was the easiest I've ever had. 9 others after that where I'm much wiser, I've more experience, have gotten way harder. So you just never know when you're going to meet the right investor. That happened to be the perfect investor at the perfect time, and it just fell together beautifully. I've had rounds where I've had to pitch 70 VCs, no joke, 70, and got no's from all of them until the last one, right? Like, you just don't know if it's 1 or 70, and ultimately you've got to be in that mindset to deal with it if it is 70, and be really thankful if it's 1 or 5 or 10, because I've maybe 3 or 4 out of the 10 rounds were, 5 or so VCs, very quick, very efficient process. And I think the majority were longer, tedious processes, because the company would have some challenge that it hadn't quite gotten over. Like, the really easy rounds are when we've overcome a big challenge and we're like in this kind of fast growth, beautiful growth mode. And that's great. But as the company typically goes like this. And so when you're in this stage where you're going down or flat, that's really hard to raise. And sometimes that happens to correlate with when you're out of capital and you've got to go through these tough rounds. So it comes with its own challenges, the VC raising, but generally speaking, I prefer it over bootstrapping.
Got it. No, yeah, thanks for sharing. And that can hook you, right? If that first VC raise was talking to somebody getting a term sheet a week later, and yeah, that's one of those that just, yeah, one in a million kind of thing. So that's awesome. So like, what would you say? So you mentioned some nuances, right? Like you have a little more cash, so there's less of the like I'm stressed day to day because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pay the bills that you have with bootstrapping. But you've also got, this other group, these investors that have an interest, right, and have certain timelines, expectations that don't necessarily that you don't have when you bootstrap. How have you managed to balance those kind of additional expectations as well as to your point, right? Like you've got to hit the milestones and raise that next round in the next, 12, 18 months. How have you managed that transition, and what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs that might be raising venture capital and trying to navigate that themselves?
Yeah, I try to make sure that the investors and I and the whole team are all aligned on like what our targets are for the year. So we build out a financial model and then we do OKRs every quarter, which basically just, we set a goal for ourselves. This is one thing we're going to focus on. What are the 5 things that we have to achieve in order to hit that one thing? And then underneath each of those 5, what are the 5 things that, actual tasks that need to get done in order to make those move the needle. So that kind of waterfall effect from a goal is really important. And then we tie that goal into the model. What would that look like if we hit it financially? And we share all of that at the quarterly board meeting so that the board sees the plan. We have a plan as a team. Everybody's aligned on it. Now at a startup, it's really hard to hit those plans. I mean, many times you'll miss. Sometimes you'll exceed them. I mean, it all depends on the years. I've had over the 23 years where I've crushed those goals. And I've had 5 years in a row where we couldn't hit a goal to save our lives. And it comes down to that product market fit. And when you get there, it's everything just seems easier. Like everything just grows and goes. And until you hit that, nothing else really matters because you can put together the most beautiful plan and the most beautiful financials, and you're going to miss. And your board's not going to be happy, and investors aren't going to be happy. And it's going to be really hard to do your next round. And so, it's one of those tricky things. There's so many things you have to worry about as a startup getting started, but none of them matter as much as the product market fit. And once you hit that, you can have all kinds of other problems underneath it. Bad people in certain positions, that'll be covered up with product market fit. You'll find somebody else better. You can replace them. They can make lots of mistakes. You can make tons of mistakes when you hit product market fit and still look great because your growth and your numbers are going like this. And so ultimately that's it. And you hear a lot of talk about it, but I would just, I'm getting that lesson even again. I mean, you'd think on company 5, like you would know how to do it and everything would probably run fairly smooth. And there are some elements that you are better at with experience, but you also have to be really careful because if you've done good in the past, like I was always a growth minded CEO. I'm like, oh, growth is pretty easy. I've done that, a lot. I took my eye off the ball just a little bit. And it's amazing, like you got to stay humble, you got to stay hungry, even after many, many runs, because it's really hard. Every single time, it's really hard to get to that product market fit, to get to where your company has that really nice, sustainable revenue growth. You've got that LTV to CAC of 2.5 or 3 or 4. You've got good metrics, you've got good growth. It's just hard every single time, even with a ton of experience. So focusing on that is basically the secret to hitting your forecast. Hitting your forecast is the secret to keeping your board happy.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense, John. And any thoughts around finding product market fit? I know it's different for every company and obviously different customer segment, but like how do you navigate that? Because, it's hard, right? It's hard to find that. Like how do you approach product market fit, and how are you approaching it at Vessel?
I think the key is to try to figure out how to find it on as little burn as possible. A lot of company, and I've done this mistake multiple times, where you have this great idea, you get some initial feedback that looks really promising. And then you start to build out the organization thinking like, well, we'll just make a couple tweaks here and a couple tweaks there. And our LTV to CAC will go from 2.0 to 3.0. And it typically doesn't always go that smooth and that easily. And next thing you know, if you've got this big burn and you still haven't hit product market fit, that's where you get into real trouble. And so ultimately, if you can keep the team as lean as possible, on my next company, what I'd probably do is like a full stack developer who can build the app. Most of my stuff is tech based, and just stick with the two of us with some equity to just try to figure it out and get that product market fit as small of a team as possible. It's not always possible to do one. Like for Vessel, we couldn't do that because we had a test card we had to build. So we had to spend a lot of money over 5 years building this really cool test card that has a lot of science and engineering. But if you can, and it's just an app with technology purely and no science or manufacturing, I would keep that team as lean as possible until you absolutely know you got product market fit. And the dangerous thing, there can be this fake product market fit, which is early adopters. So that happened to us at Vessel, for example. We had the most amazing numbers with our first 1,000 users. They were super loyal. Our retention was off the charts. Our LTV to CAC on those people was crazy because they click on Instagram and add and buy. So we had a really low CAC, we had a really high LTV. And then we kind of moved into the mass market, 3-4 months after we launched, as we got to 10,000 users, and they behaved differently. They weren't as enthusiastic, so they didn't stay on as long, and they were harder to acquire as we got outside of our real niche market. So that's another tricky, slippery slope. You got to be careful of. If you made it work with 100 or 1,000 people, it might not work at the same level for 10,000. So you really got to keep that hunger and that desire to learn, and interview all those like kind of broader customers. What are those personas that are actually working inside of there? How can you get niche and stay niche to a specific group, and what are they looking for that your earlier batch wasn't, that would keep them around longer and that would help you acquire them faster? So we've learned things like, now we have a free trial, so we acquire users really cost effectively at this point. We never had that before because we didn't need it initially, but now we realize we do need that. We also now have a more flexible membership option. Our early adopters were testing once a week and totally cool with that. The broader group that we now attract doesn't want to test as frequently. They want more flexibility. So now you can pay like as little as 10 to 50 bucks a month for Vessel, and test when you can buy test cards when you want. And that flexibility has been huge. So the free trial and flex membership is how we've dealt with the fact that initially we thought we had it dialed because the first 1,000, the numbers were off the charts. And now the numbers are back to in a really good, healthy spot because of those, changes we made.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, John. And I want to, can we pause and can you just quickly, for those that aren't familiar, what is Vessel? Can you give the quick little pitch on who you are and what you guys do?
Absolutely. So this is Vessel right here. If those of you who are watching on video can see, those of you who are listening to audio, it's just a little test card about half the size of your phone. You pee on the bottom area right here, and then you scan it with our app on your phone, and it tells you a little bit about what's going on inside your body. So it'll instantly, the whole process is 3 minutes. It'll tell you things like your hydration levels, your nutrient levels like magnesium, vitamin C, calcium. It'll tell you urinary tract, if you have any issues there, about 10 markers in total. And these test cards are kind of around 10 to 20 bucks, depending on the plan you're on. So really affordable at-home testing, and you get the results instantly. Then inside the app, when we show you your results, we also ask you a little bit about yourself, like what are your goals and some of your issues? Are you having trouble sleeping? With energy, is that your issue? Digestion, what is it? And if it's, let's say, something like sleep, we'll ask you a little bit more details, like trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up refreshed. And then what our algorithm does, it looks at your test results and some of the issues you're having, and we build a plan for you. We tell you what foods would be really good for you, what supplements would be really good for you, and what lifestyle changes might help you sleep better as well. So you get this program, there's some education in it, there's some activities in it. Hopefully within a matter of weeks or months, you're feeling a lot better. Our goal is to help you sleep better, help you have more energy. And along the way, inside the app, there is a nutritionist on chat, a team of nutritionists. So you can ask any question you want. It's included with any membership as part of the program. So they're there to support you and help you get your goals. If you're not feeling better in a couple of weeks, reach out to them. They'll help modify your program and get you there. It's almost like a functional medicine doctor in your pocket, in the sense that you have some testing to learn about your body, a quiz that helps us get a little bit more data, and then you get this personalized program, food, supplement, lifestyle, and a coach who's certified nutritionist to help you, reach those wellness goals, all from home for pretty affordable. Most programs are around 30 bucks a month.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds really cool. It sounds like it also might have come out of your own need after living on top ramen for the number of years that you did to get your body back to where it needs to be.
100%. In fact, so this is the story behind Vessel. When I hit my mid-30s, I'd been an entrepreneur for 15 years at that point, and I started having health issues, probably from the top ramen. I was waking up at like 2 a.m., full of energy, brain can't shut off because I've got a million problems I'm trying to figure out. And I also had issues like I'd eat lunch and I'd go into like this food coma. I'd be kind of like slow and I'd have to do like basic tasks. And I also had trouble with memory all of a sudden. I was so good with names when I was younger, and I started being challenged with that. My conventional doctor was like, do you want Xanax for sleep? Like he's trying to give me prescriptions, and he's like, you're just getting old, deal with it. But I went and I saw a functional medicine doctor. This is about 10 years ago, so it was still pretty new, this concept of like doing a blood test, understanding what's going on inside your body and getting a custom program. But I did it. I learned all kinds of stuff. My magnesium levels were low. Most of our magnesium levels are low. That can affect your sleep, your mood. Magnesium is really critical for so many different components in our body. And so I got a good supplement, not some crappy buy at the store that's like low quality and doesn't actually absorb. I bought the good stuff. I got my magnesium levels up, and within like I don't know a month or so, I was sleeping better just that easily. There was other things like I tried intermittent fasting, which they recommended, and that worked great. I no longer have food coma. My body type really likes to, eat dinner and then eat again at noon. And I also found my mercury levels were off the charts. So I was eating too much sushi, and the mercury levels were like crazy high, and that was affecting my memory. Like Tony Robbins just almost like died from mercury poisoning. Like it's a real thing that most of us think fish is healthy, but big fish has lots of mercury in it. And I learned about that. I got my levels lowered, and my memory came back. I was like remembering stuff I haven't remembered forever. So the functional medicine doctor experience changed my life, got me back to a really healthy state. I've been on that journey ever since, like just really trying to dial in my wellness. It always ebbs and flows. Like I'll have trouble sleeping again, and I'll figure out something else. Oh, I need blackout shades, or oh, I'm exercising too late, or I'm not getting out in the morning for some sunshine. There's all these things you can do to kind of dial in your body. The problem, functional medicine is awesome, but it's really expensive, and it's only available to those of us who can afford thousands of dollars in lab tests. The functional doctors that I work with now are like $500 an hour. It's just accessible to that top 1%, maybe 5%. So with Vessel, we're trying to bring this to the masses and creating a test card that's like $10, 10 to 20 bucks, and you get the results instantly. And then there is a coach in the app, and the app provides that full, food supplement lifestyle program that you would get by going to a functional medicine doctor. So it's hopefully making that available to millions of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to kind of dial in their body and feel their best.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Makes a lot of sense. It's definitely a very, focused on the individual approach, right? And how can we eat better? And as you said, functional, right? It's very functional versus trying to just cover up symptoms, which I feel like is a lot of what we tend to lean towards, because that's just how the medical system's been set up.
100%. But conventional medicine is all about like solving problems after they arise. But where's that proactive stuff about eating the right foods and taking the right supplements and doing the right lifestyle changes that not only prevent those chronic diseases, but also you just feel your best. Like I am such a better entrepreneur when I'm at 100%. If I slept really good last night and I'm like have a ton of energy, I'm going to crush it. If I slept horribly and my energy levels are low, I'm not going to make good decisions. I'm not going to be a great CEO. And so it ultimately has a huge impact on your life. And that's just me as an entrepreneur, but everyone has their life that they're living to do whatever it is that they're passionate about. And their health, their wellness, like how good they feel, makes a huge difference in where they end up in 5 or 10 years from now. If you're operating at 100%, which most people are not, you're crushing it, you're living your best life. Most of us are operating in the 60 to 70% because we just don't know we have these issues that are holding us back from our full potential. So yeah, that's what Vessel's all about. And just as a plug for your listeners, we did just launch a free trial. We launched version 2.0 in June. So it's got a couple new tests like calcium, sodium, UTIs, new test card, new packaging, all kinds of great stuff, improvements. But along with it, it's a free trial. So you pay $5.95 in shipping. We send you a single test card. You get to try out the whole experience. You get the nutritionist on chat. You get personalized recommendations. And if you love it, just don't cancel it. In 14 days, it turns into an actual regular membership where every month we'll send you 1 to 4 cards. It's up to you. Or you can do our flexible membership, which is where you just pay 10 to 15 bucks a month and you buy cards as you want them. So vesselhealth.com is where you can go check it out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jon. And last kind of question for you here is you've obviously, this is business number 5. You've enjoyed being an entrepreneur. You see yourself doing this for the next 70 to 80 years. How do you define success for yourself? Like, what keeps driving you every day?
Yeah, it sounds simplistic, but happiness. For me, because it is a 50-year journey, or maybe even longer if some of these longevity things come to fruition, you got to enjoy that journey. So for one, it's working on companies that I'm super passionate about. When I sold my company, when I talked about that mindfulness on the island, the epiphany there was, okay, I'm going to start working for impact. I was starting companies just to make money so I could get off top ramen, and that's okay. At some point, you might have to do that. But as soon as you can switch over to what's the product that I think can make the biggest impact on people's lives, that's incredibly selfishly fulfilling. Because Vessel, every time I get a testimonial of somebody's like, oh my gosh, I'm sleeping so much better, you changed my life, that feels incredible. Way better than, like, I don't know, somebody saying you saved me a little bit of money on baby products, right? It's not to say that company wasn't a great company to do it. I mean, we did help, we delivered baby products, we saved people money, made convenience, but I think there's kind of these levels, and you want to kind of work your way up the level to get to the bigger impact businesses, because they are more fulfilling, they bring a lot of happiness. The other thing that's been really important for me, as I've kind of, every business I try to get better at this, is balance. I killed myself in my first companies thinking I'm going to work really hard, make a bunch of money, and then chill. Well, that doesn't really work. You will be bored out of your mind with the chill part after a while. So if you are truly an entrepreneur, maybe you'll find what your real passion was and move into knitting or something. But for those of us who are truly entrepreneurs, we have to keep building. So, don't kill yourself for that exit, because after the exit, you're just going to start all over again, or maybe go into VC or whatever, but you're going to keep going. And so having that long game perspective makes me, make sure I wake up in the morning and I go for a walk first thing for 30 minutes plus, just to think and clear my head. I don't listen to podcasts or anything. I just walk. Then I come back and meditate. And that helps me kind of clear my head. I work out in the middle of the day now. I used to do it in the morning. Now I do it in the middle of the day right before I eat. So I'm staying fit. I'm staying healthy. I spend time with my friends, my families on the weekend, on the weeknights. I take one trip a quarter where I go off, and I kind of rotate it. One I'll do entirely on my own, solo, which is great because I can just think. I like to surf, so I'll go to a beach somewhere. I like to snowboard, I'll go to the mountains, and I'll just be by myself the whole, 4 days, or if I can do a whole week, that's even better. And then I'll go with my friends or my family on the next trip, and I rotate between those. So I get that alone time, but I also get that fun family friend time. And I make sure I do that. I make sure my team does that too. We're really open about us taking time off and rejuvenating, because you function better, you think better, you make better decisions, and ultimately the company will do better if you're in your peak physical and mental state. So having that balance and really enjoying that journey is great. And if you can have something that you're so passionate about that makes such a big impact, then you're really kind of a very fortunate person to be able to work on something you love working on. It doesn't get much better than that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Jon. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sitting down. It's been a lot of fun. Really appreciate your time. You already plugged it, but again, can you remind the listeners how they can find Vessel Health and then also connect with you outside of this podcast?
Absolutely. So vesselhealth.com. Vessel is Vessel, and then just health.com. Free trial for you guys on the website. And if you want to connect with me, probably Twitter is the best. So I'm just at Jon Carder on Twitter. So that's just JONCARD as in David ER.
Awesome. Thank you, Jon. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, William. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. On your way out, please share the podcast with others. It's the only way that the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs and top performers. And of course, pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side over and over until you're looking.